GamingBolt presents 14 video games that saved the real ending for after launch. It's a given that you can't satisfy everyone with the story's ending. Expectations are hard to manage, even if the most logical choice is to not do an ending like Matrix Revelations. Video game endings are thankfully not set in stone, and given the right incentive, developers can either change the base game's conclusion or add DLC to alter things. Some of these are optional, and one went live for a week while also being satirical. But here are 14 video games that saved their real endings for after they launched. Spoilers are naturally inbound. Extended Cut, Mass Effect 3. The sheer outrage for Mass Effect 3's original ending is well documented at this point, but long story short, your choices led to a fairly fixed ending. That's the least angry view of it. Because of this outrage, BioWare released the Extended Cut, with several new canon endings for free. This included the Reapers destroying humanity but future generations eventually winning out, among other things, rather than the pseudo-indoctrination theory teasing that the original supposedly had. Frank Rising, Dead Rising 4. Dead Rising 4 may have returned to Willamette with Frank West, but it had more than its fair share of issues for hardcore fans. One of those was the cliffhanger ending where Frank sacrifices himself so that his friends could escape from the zombie horde, leaving his fate unknown. The story would pick up in Frank Rising DLC, where West was infected and sought out a cure. Well, at least it brought timers back into the mix. Broken Steel, Fallout 3. Fallout 3 ends in a bizarre way. You're tasked with potentially purifying the Tidal Basin and eventually the Potomac River, thus saving Washington. Problem is that the room where the code must be input is filled with radiation. The lone wanderer originally had to go in and just die. In the Broken Steel DLC, you get the option to send, your radiation-proof companions into the chamber instead. Even if the wanderer goes in, he'll simply recover from radiation in 2 weeks and be able to explore the open world. What a novel concept. The Lost Archive, Assassin's Creed Revelations. We'll spare you the convoluted plot details of Assassin's Creed, but essentially Desmond and his friends are trying to stop a solar flare from wiping out all of civilization. The entire journey of Ezio to Masyaf and Constantinople to learn the assassin's true purpose is actually an attempt by Desmond to unlock the central vault in present time. The game ends with the vault unlocking and Desmond knowing his task, but the Lost Archive thankfully expanded on why he killed Lucy in the first place. Turns out she was working for the Templars the whole time, and using Desmond, sadly, it didn't quite work out. The Witch Hunt, Dragon Age Origins. One could consider Dragon Age Origins storyline to wrap up with the base game. You kill the Archdemon, push back the Darkspawn, and emerge victorious. However, that's not the full story. What happens to Morrigan and the child she's allegedly carrying? While it's possible for Morrigan to leave the party if you refuse her offer in Origins, the Witch Hunt DLC offers a close to her story while teasing some nonsense with portals. This leads us to Trespasser, Dragon Age Inquisition. In many ways, the Trespasser DLC is even more essential than the Witch Hunt. The finale of Dragon Age Inquisition teased that Solace was something else entirely. In Trespasser, we learn that he's actually Finharel, who allowed Corypheus to find the Orb of Destruction in Inquisition. The fate of the Inquisition, Andraste's Herald, the Anchor, and more are also showcased, thus serving as more than just a neat epilogue for Inquisition. The Assignment and the Consequence, The Evil Within. Aside from the astonishing number of ways to die, The Evil Within was a solid survival horror title with a pretty convoluted plot. One of the key points of the plot was Julie Kidman, the partner of Sebastian who's encountered throughout the original game, doing her own thing, like, shooting their other partner, Joseph. The Assignment and the Consequence DLCs attempt to answer why Kidman is doing what she's doing. As it turns out, she's a test subject, and the STEM project, something everyone's been fighting over, was already abandoned. We learn more about Mobius in the process, and the plot truly continues beyond Kidman simply saving Sebastian. The Red Hood Story Pack, Batman Arkham Knight. So, Batman Arkham Knight ends with Bruce Wayne's identity being known throughout Gotham, the Nightfall Protocol destroying Wayne Manor, and a monstrous bat roaming the streets. Surprisingly enough, the game's namesake, Jason Todd, just disappeared, never to be mentioned again. He would actually have his own story DLC, the Red Hood Story Pack, that saw him battling the Black Mask. It's a nice little epilogue of sorts that showcases Todd's transition to an anti-hero role, atoning for his crimes against Gotham and honoring Wayne's legacy. Free update, Portal. Ever wondered how Portal segues into Portal 2? As it turns out, Valve released a free update that changed the ending for the original game. Based off an idea by writer Eric Wolfpaw, the party escort bot was added to the game and it's obsessed with Chell assuming the party escort submission position. Weird. You bet, but in the new ending, when Chell escapes, the party escort bot shows up, thanks her for assuming the position, and then takes her back to Aperture to set up Portal 2. Awakened, Dead Space 3. Dead Space 3 ended on a poetic note of sorts when Isaac Clarke died in the end. And hey, how does one survive the fall back to a friggin' planet? Isaac Clarke and John Carver do, and the Awakened DLC sees them dealing with the Circle's remnants. Much of the horror that dictated the previous two games returns here, but hilariously enough, Awakened actually ends with another cliffhanger as the Brethren moons attack Earth. Clearly EA will make a sequel to continue the story, right? Right? Whistleblower, Outlast. Remember Wayland Park, the guy who leaks information to Miles Upshur in Outlast about Mount Massive's shadiness. He's the central character in the Whistleblower DLC taking place before the events of the first game. However, eventually it runs parallel to Outlast's main story. We learn that the Murkoff Corporation brought in special forces to kill everyone, as seen in Outlast's ending. Wayland is seriously injured at one point and even encounters Miles' Walrider-possessed body. Thankfully, he makes it out alive and leaks information on Murkoff's wrongdoing, which sadly didn't prevent Outlast 2's insanity from happening. Reverie and Resurrection, Castlevania Lords of Shadow. For rushed DLC, it's pretty crazy how much of the story in Castlevania Lords of Shadow's DLC is essential to the main plot. Reverie and Resurrection see Gabriel Belmont battling the Forgotten One, and in the process, becoming a vampire. Not only that, but he becomes the vampire, Dracula himself, after being corrupted by the power of the Forgotten One. In fact, Zobek from the Brotherhood, who started all of this nonsense, like killing Gabriel's wife Marie, is actually alive and sets up eventually helping Gabriel in Lords of Shadow 2. Epilogue, Prince of Persia. Did you think that Ahriman really took over the world at the end of 2008's Prince of Persia? The story actually continued in the Epilogue DLC with the prince and Elika surviving to battle him again. Somehow it ends with Elika leaving the prince after expressing her annoyance with him several times, and Ahriman still seeking revenge despite being impaled on spikes? Well then. Week-long ending, Frozen Synapse. As a tongue-in-cheek response to the whole Mass Effect 3 ending controversy, Frozen Synapse developer Mode 7 Games actually changed the ending of its own game. Granted, it was only for a week, but it had the image of a pony and a dinosaur with the subtitle stating that, "This is the ending to a computer game. We don't care if you like it, but at least the pony and dinosaur are happy." Would this be classified as the game's real ending? For a week, it certainly was. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.